everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is one of the videos in my How to Knit series, and today we're going to talk about casting on. And so I have this little ball of Capri yarn by Loops and Threads, and it is suggesting we use a US 9 knitting needle or I9 K10.5 crochet hook. We're going to be knitting today. This is a medium 4-weight yarn. This is a great beginner yarn. It's not super fuzzy and fluffy. It's really easy to see your stitches with, so that's why we're going to be using it. And then I've got a couple of double pointed needles here that we're going to be using as well. If you are a beginner, I highly suggest just using straight needles. That will probably be a lot easier for you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, on a ball of yarn, there's usually one end where the yarn is tucked in, and you can pull it out. So there we go. Some people pull from the center of the ball, some people pull from the outside. It really kind of depends on your preference. I particularly like to pull from the outside because when you're pulling from the center, a lot of times you can pull out like a big blob of tangled yarn. And also if you're pulling from the center, your yarn ball can kind of collapse. So that's just my personal preference. You do whatever works best for you. All right, so one of the things I want to mention when casting on is there are a variety of different ways to cast on. I'm going to show you a couple of more popular ways, but really you can kind of do it whichever way you prefer. So we're going to be talking about the long tail cast on today. Now, one of the main questions I had when I was a beginner is how much yarn do I pull out? Now, long tail means that we're going to make a long yarn tail here, and then we're going to start casting on somewhere over here, and we're kind of going to use this tail for our cast on stitches. So the question is, how long do you make this tail? And it depends on how many stitches you are being told to cast on. One of the ways that I figure that out is I will just take my yarn tail here and just hang on to it. I give myself a little bit of leeway, and then I will wrap it around, say 10 times. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, and then however long that is, say I have to cast on 90 stitches, I will make it as long as it needs to be based on my 10 here. So I need 9 lengths about this long. That's just kind of how I do it. It's sort of a guessing game when you're doing that. I have had instances where I've cast on and not had enough, so it's just good to be safe and just kind of do it that method. So now there are even a couple different ways to do the long tail cast on. So you can do it with a slip knot, or you can not use a slip knot. The first way I'm going to show you guys, especially for beginners, is a slip knot because it's a little bit easier to hang on to. So to make a slip knot, we're just going to take our yarn, move those out of the way, and make a loop like so, and then we're just going to pull the yarn up through that loop, and that creates a knot. And then when you pull this, the knot gets smaller, and that's what is a slip knot. So again, maybe I can show you on the table here. Make a loop with your yarn, and then take your tail and just pull it through that. Okay, and then you're going to put that on your needle and just tighten it up. All right, so now we've got our tail over this way, and we've got our ball of yarn going this way. Okay, now I've moved mine around so that my tail is going towards me and my ball of yarn is going away from me. That's just the way I learned. I don't think it actually really matters a whole lot. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. You'll notice that you have 2 strands. You're going to take your index finger and your thumb and put them through those 2 strands, and then open them up and kind of lean it this way. That way you have sort of a strand going over your thumb and a strand going over your finger, kind of like an M, I guess, if you will. So let's do that one more time. We've got our 2 strands here, and we're going to just put our index and thumb through those strands and then open them up and turn your hand open. Okay, you can see this one, it's not cooperating. Okay, so that's the hand motion. Now I go ahead and grab the other 2 tails with my last 2 fingers just to kind of give me some tension. So I'm going to put my fingers through again, grab them, open my fingers up, and oops, drop my stitch. There we go. And have it like this. Okay. Now to cast on, you're going to go under the yarn closest to you that's around your thumb, over the other one, and then under the one on your finger. Okay, and then pull that thumb one over the top and just pull down. And we're going to do a lot of these, so if you didn't quite get that, don't worry. Okay, again, put your fingers through, grab onto your tails, open your fingers up, and turn. Okay, again, go under the yarn closest to you on your thumb, and then over the one on your first finger. And then this thumb yarn is actually going to go over the back side, and you can kind of drop it and pull it tight. And so you're starting to get these little stitches that look like knit stitches on the bottom here. So now we've got 3 stitches cast on. So our slip knot counts as 1 stitch. So we've got 3 stitches now. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep going. So again, and I don't let go of my yarn every time, I just hang on to it and keep going. But again, we're gonna put our fingers through our little V of yarn here, grab it with your pinky, open up your fingers and pull it like this, under the yarn on your thumb, over the yarn on your first finger, and then bring that yarn out of your thumb over the needle and drop it. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a few here for you. Under, over, drop it. Under your thumb, over your first finger, and drop it. And I'll just keep doing a few of these so that you can see it and do it with me. You can always rewind this video, but super easy and you'll get the hang of it. Okay, under your thumb, over your first finger, and drop it. Under your thumb, over your first finger, and again that thumb yarn kind of goes over the hook then. So really what we're making the knot, the stitch with is the yarn on our first finger. And you can just keep going for however many stitches your pattern calls for you to cast on. And if you kind of spread them out, now it's easy to count our stitches. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cast on. And if you look at the bottom, you can see that it's kind of this little braided looking kind of thing, these little V's on here. Okay, and you can just keep going. You can practice this as many times as you want to get it, but I do want to show you one other way to do the long tail cast on without using a slip knot. Okay, so this one is probably a little bit harder for beginners just because the slip knot kind of helps give you some stability and you aren't starting off with that. So what I do is I take my yarn, I've got my working yarn off to my right, I've got my ball of yarn over here off to my left, and I'm going to wrap it over my thumb, over my first finger, and drop it so I kind of have this triangle happening. Again, I'm going to use my last 2 fingers to kind of just hang on to that triangle. Okay, so over my thumb, over my first finger, so you've got a triangle, and then grab your tails. Okay, and then instead of doing a slip knot, we're going to skip the slip knot, and this can just create a more cohesive look if you're doing something that's like knit in the round or something like that. So I actually prefer this method. We're going to take our needle and go under the yarn and just put our finger there and kind of hang on to it. And then we're going to do the same motion that we did just now as far as casting on goes. So we're going to turn our hand again, but now instead of having a slip knot, we're just holding it with our first finger. We're going to go under the thumb, over the finger, and drop it. And that has created 2 stitches. Again, it just, instead of having a knot here, we've got a kind of a nicer seam, let's say. Okay, so again, same deal though with the yarn. Let me get this out of the way. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to put my first 2 fingers through my yarn, grab onto it, open them up, and pull it open, just like we did the last one. This is the same exact motion, it's just we didn't do a slip knot at the front. Okay, so let me show you that again. So here's our yarn. I'm just going to lay it over my thumb, over my finger to create that V, grab it with my fingers, and then instead of creating the slip knot, we're just going to put our needle on our yarn, hang on to it with our first finger, and then create our little V by just turning our hand over, and then under the thumb, over the first finger, and drop it, and just keep going. Under the thumb, over the first finger, and pull tight. And each time I do that, I'm pulling it tight, but I'm not pulling it so tight that like I can't even move these. I want them to be semi slippy so that I can get them off. This first row will be tighter than will be the tightest row that you knit. Let's just put it that way. Once you get that first row knit, it's usually a lot easier and things slide a little bit better. So you want to get it on there, but don't like, you know, get it on so tight that your stitch won't be able to slide around on your needle at all. Okay, So that is the basic long tail cast on. Pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. Over, or under, over, pull it off, under, over, pull it off, under, over, and just keep doing that for however many stitches your pattern says to cast on. And that's just your plain long tail cast on. Okay, and then like you can see here, we've got our little V stitches, and instead of having a knot right here, we just have a little mini kind of V stitch there. So same principle, just a little bit of a different way of doing it. So that's it. That's how you do the long tail cast on with either a slip knot or without a slip knot. Feel free to rewind and rewatch this video as many times as you need to. Practice casting on and getting a nice tension so that all of these little V's back here look similar. As you can see, I kind of have one that's a little puffier than others right there. So just practice casting on until you have a nice even tension, and then you're ready to start your projects. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe. That way I know to keep making these tutorials. Thanks so much for watching today, and I will see you next time.